Bezras Hashem is for Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parashat Shemot. We're starting a new sefer called Parashat Shemot, Shnas Tov Shian Pei Beis. One of the members of the Israeli parliament was called Reb Shlomo Lawrence, and he was representing the Agudas Yisrael for many years in the Knesset in Israel, and he wrote a book called a diary that he had. And he describes that one day he met Ben Gurion after Ben Gurion was already a prime minister in Israel. And Ben Gurion was telling him that he's saying, Reb Shlomo, many things I understood why I did it. I understand the motive, I understood why I did it. But there's one thing which I don't understand. It baffles me. Why did I do it? And he asked, what is it? He said, when I accepted the Bachuri Yeshiva from going to the army, it was Ben Gurion that introduced the law that anyone who learns Torah doesn't have to join the army. And he says, now looking back, that's the one thing I can't understand why I introduced this law. Said Reb Shlomo Lawrence, because it says in Mishlei, Leiv Melochim V'Sorim B'Yad Hashem. The hearts of the kings and the decision makers of the nation are in the hands of Hashem. It's not them deciding. They represent a whole country. When somebody represents a whole country, it's already not your own personal bechira. You are a messenger of Hashem. And what Hashem wants to lead this country in a certain direction. That's the way it will go, through the king's decision, and he decides. So the most powerful man in the country, he may look like a king, the most powerful person, but yet he is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's somebody, once a Rav who once said, this gives me a menuchat nefesh, a peace of mind, that I know that the kings of the country at least, and all their decisions, wherever it may look, but I know it's all by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What they are doing, everything is b'yad Hashem, and we can daven to Hashem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu can bring us a Yeshua. And this, I reminded this story, what reminded me this story, because lately former President Trump gave an interview, and suddenly now he speaks so much differently than when he was a president in America. Suddenly now he praises Mahmoud Abbas, and he speaks to the left, the journalists from the left. They never spoke to once when he was a president of America. And he starts saying, I gave so many presents to Israel. I did so much for Israel. And he himself seems shocked by how much he actually gave free of charge to the state of Israel. So I find that this is as well the idea that when somebody is a president, somebody is a prime minister, somebody is in this position, in the decision making, he is really a messenger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's a shliach of Hashem, and they may look back and say, how did I do this? And it's a lesson for us as well. We, instead of patting ourselves on the shoulders and saying, we're so good, we impressed the president, and we have to always know, you're not impressing no president. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu that gives the ultimate decision. It's all chesed Hashem, kindness of Hashem, which is done through the shliach of the kings, prime ministers or presidents of the country. And this is a very much introduction to this week's parasha, that we find the most amazing thing, that Paroh, according to one shitta, was the actual Paroh that Yosef, that he brought Yosef into the country, and Yosef changed over the country, making it stomach from Egypt into a superpower, where people came from around the world buying food. Can you imagine how much money came into Egypt? And just imagine, for example, Pfizer. Pfizer had a vaccine of one illness, Corona, and when it first came out, that vaccine, how many people wanted the vaccine? People were willing to pay so much money just to get that vaccine. And that's one vaccine. Imagine you're the only country that has food, and then the whole world is in a famine, and they're coming to you for food. They were selling their assets, selling their properties, selling their business, selling themselves to Egypt in order to attain food. And so Yosef turned around the whole of Egypt with the wisdom of Yosef, that they were able to prosper in such a manner. And that same Paroh, he gave the most anti-Semitic speech. Paroh said that now we have to kill off the Jews. You know why? He said it to the whole nation. This was a little secret meeting. Daber el Amo, he spoke to the whole nation. He said, the Jews, if we don't kill them, they will kill us. And Hashem Yirachim, this has been echoed throughout history. Throughout history, they've always made the oppressed into the oppressor. Always trying to make the Jews look like they're the ones. That if we don't kill them, if we don't put them, then they will kill us. They will take our businesses. They will take everything that we have. Instead of looking at the good what the Jews contributed throughout the wars, but rather they turn the Jews, the anti-Semites in history, always were able to, going and following the footsteps of Paroh. This speech Paroh gave to the nation, and the way he changed the Jews from being the most patriotic people in the country, who changed the country to such a better place, and they made them into looking like they're the oppressors. But let's go. But why did this happen? Because Paroh gave them a virus. It's not the king. The same king can change over. Hashem said to Avram Avinu, Hashem said to our holy forefather Avram, Ki ger yeh zarecho beretz lo Elohem va'avodom ve'inu oisam abba me'ishono. There will come a generation, there will come a time, they will go to any country. It didn't have to be Paroh. But Paroh was such a wicked man that it was in his country that it was taken place. His prophecy was realized in Egypt. During the exile in Egypt, Am Yisrael were in Mitzrayim. Now, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to have time to have a look. And I want to start with a story, if it's possible. There was a journalist in the early 1900s, and he wrote as follows, a very interesting story. What he was trying to work out was that what is a tafkid of a rov? What is the main job, the main purpose of a rabbi of a community? And so he wrote as follows. I saw this Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky once brought this down, of this journalist from an old newspaper, Zeitung, from the turn of the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century. So he went first to the first rabbi called Rabbi Rafal Shapira, who was the son-in-law of the Netziv. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Volozhin Yeshiva, and he asked him, what is the main purpose, the main job of a Rov? So he said, the Rov has to be the one that teaches Torah. Shiurei Torah, teaching Torah. People shouldn't be ignorant, and that's a tafkid of a Rov. So he went on to Kovna, another town in Lita, and he asked over there Rabbi Yitzchok Blazer, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yisroel Salanta, and he asked him, what's the main avoider, the tafkid of the Rov? And he said, being a Talmud of Rabbi Yisroel Salanta, he said the main tafkid of a Rov is to teach Musa, Yirat Shomayim. People should know a purpose in life. And this was the idea from the Musa movement of Rabbi Yisroel Salanta. Rabbi Yitzchok Blazer was his student, and he said this is the main job of a Rov, is to teach the people Yirat Shomayim and Avodat Hashem, the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he traveled on to Novardok, and he met there Rab Epstein. He was a great halacha person, he wrote a sefer called Aruch HaShulchan. And he asked him what's the purpose of a Rov. He said the tafkid of a Rov is that he should teach halachas. People should know Shabbos, Yom Tov, what to do. Halachas, a Rav should teach halachas. So this journalist was on the train, and he was wondering to say if he heard all the answers so far. He heard that the Rav has to teach Torah. He heard the Rav has to teach Halacha. Rav has to teach Yirat Shomayim and Musar. And now he's traveling to Reb Chaim of Brisk. And he's going to ask the Brisker Rav the same question. And when he walked in by Reb Chaim of Brisk, Reb Chaim of Brisk first asked him, tell me, what did they answer you till now? So he said, I'll tell you, they told me to teach Torah, Yirat Shomayim, Halacha. Said they're all right and everyone is correct. That is the purpose of a Rov. That's a tafkid of a Rov. But that is not the main reason, the main tafkid of the Rov. And you know what it is to Reb Chaim of Brisk? He said the main tafkid of a Rov is to make sure that the almona, the widow in the community, has wood to heat up, to burn in the furnace in the home, that the home should be kept warm throughout the winter. And the Yosoimim, the orphans, should have enough warm clothing to last them the winter. The Rov is responsible. The Rov has to take on himself that responsibility to make sure everyone has what they need. The Rachmanos, the compassion, that is what the Rov has to have. No one else. There are many people that may not pay attention to other people in the community, but the Rov has to pay attention. He has to have that compassion for the people of his community. And that's how we see the first Rabbi, the first Rov, the first Manhig, the first leader in Am Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the first encounter we have, was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was a prince in the palace of Paroh, and he left the palace, and the Medrash says he took off his royal garments. Paroh respected him very, very much. It says, Vayigdal Oesh. Moshe Rabbeinu became one of the most affluent people in Egypt. And he had it was able to have so much respect by Paroh in the palace of Egypt. And yet he left it all behind, and he went and saw his brothers in exile, how they were suffering. And he took off his royal garment, and he helped them schlep the stones. He helped them in their works of slavery in Egypt. And then he witnessed one of the Egyptian soldiers hitting a Jewish man, a Jewish slave. Now what did he do? He looked around and he killed the slave. And this is the first encounter. The prince, he gave up his whole future in the palace of Egypt. But it's even more than that. Moshe Rabbeinu could have had the most amazing calculations for the good of Am Yisrael not to kill that Egyptian soldier. Moshe Rabbeinu had the most influence. He was there in the palace of the king. He was in the meetings. He could have slowly built his way up. Slowly his influence will grow in the inner circles in the palace of Egypt, and slowly he will become an influential man in the monarchy of Egyptian, and he will then take over, maybe even Paroh, and he will save the entire nation. The whole Jewish nation will go free. And yet, for one man, one person, he saw a soldier killing another Jew. What did he do? He killed that soldier, and that's it. All his aspirations, all the planning, all the salvation he could have brought to Am Yisrael, all went down and got burnt by this case. And then he became the most wanted man in Egypt. Paroh was looking for him everywhere. He didn't have any influence yet to save Am Yisrael, because in the Jewish ideology, you never sacrifice one person for the good of others. You never say, I cannot save you because I have the good of the general good of the people. But if you see one person suffering, al tamoid bedam reecho, never stand idly by. Don't have any calculation even which may look good, but always look to save another person. That compassion Moshe Rabbeinu had. This is the first encounter we have with Moshe Rabbeinu. And then he has as well compassion with the daughters of Yisro. And he had even compassion with the sheep that he saw. He was chasing after the sheep until the sheep found a well and started to drink. And listen to what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm so sorry. The Losh of the Medrash. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you're thirsty. And then he carried the sheep. That made it. Hashem said, that's a leader for Am Yisrael. That's a compassion I need. That's a heart I need. This is a Jew that is going to be the future leader of Am Yisrael. But if you go a bit further, Bez Hashem Yisparach and Moire de Gevaldik, says only Rav Miller from Gateshead, says Moire de Kazach, that in order that the Yeshua had to come about, the Geula, the salvation to the Jews in Egypt that had to come about, it had to be that Moshe Rabbeinu will have to be chased away from the palace of Paroh. Do you know why? Because as long as Moshe Rabbeinu was in the palace of Paroh, then the Jews weren't trusting Hashem 100%. We have their very influential man in the palace of Paroh. He's going to work for us. He's going to do something. One day, slowly, he's going to bring us a salvation. And they may have forgotten Hashem. So Hashem needed to make Moshe Rabbeinu into the most wanted man in Egypt. That his influence came to zero, to nil. And then they realized, we don't have Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem, only you can bring me a Yeshua. And that is a tikkun. Because the whole reason why they had to come to Mitzrayim was because Avram Avinu, many years ago, Hashem said to Avram Avinu, he said, come outside. And he said, look at the higher heavens, and try to count the stars. And said, this will be your children. And Avram Avinu believed in Hashem, but yet he said one thing. And he said, and he said to him, Avram Avinu said, "Bamo Eida Kirishenu." Avram Avinu had to say, Hashem, I believe you. But there was a little bit of chisoron, which in Avram Avinu's level of spirituality, it was called a chisoron. And he said, how do I know? And then came the Gzeira of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, we had to be metaken this emunah. We had to have full emunah in Hashem. And how do we have full emunah in Hashem? When Moshe Rabbeinu had to flee, and then we say, Hashem, only you can bring us out of Egypt. And now we are metaken. We correct that little fault of emunah that Avram Avinu may have had when he said, instead of saying, I believe you, he said, how do I know? And therefore, we were able to mataken only through Moshe Rabbeinu having to flee Egypt and then bringing the Yeshua from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just one more step further, we're going to see. Because the emunah wasn't totally, because let's have a look. Towards the end of the Parashat, Moshe Rabbeinu returned. About, I think, 80 years later, he came back and he said the secret code. Am Yisrael throughout the Golos were told by Yosef, by Yaakov, and he said, when a Yid will come and he will say these words, Pokoid Yifkoid Elekim Eschem Izeh, Hashem remembered you from this and he will take you out. He is the Moshiach. He is the one that will bring you out to liberate you from slavery. And Moshe Rabbeinu came and he said, and he made miracles. He took a staff, changed it to a snake. He did the miracles. Amazing. They believed this is the Mashiach. This is who we waited 210 years for. But he said, but it's not us. Please go to Paroh in his palace. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Paroh in the palace and he doesn't get the same reception. He goes to Paroh. Meanwhile, the Jews are waiting outside. They're waiting. Oh, we're soon going out. Soon there's going to be notices what time the buses are going to be taking us out of Egypt to redemption. And then what do they see? Paroh comes out himself. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't come out together with him. And then he says, Vayomer Aleim, Melech Mitzrayim, Lama Moshe Aaron Tafriu. They came here to disturb while you're working. Esomi Ma'asov, Luchul Esivlo, go back to work. And it looks like you people are you people are not working hard enough. You're thinking of escaping Egypt. We're going to now intensify the work. And the work became so much worse. For 6 months. Now imagine how that felt for Am Yisrael. Imagine how they felt. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem told him, from the palace of Paroh, you have to return direct back to Midian. And not even to go back to Am Yisrael to explain what happened. So Moshe Rabbeinu suddenly disappears. And the work only became worse. Moshiach came, Moshiach went. And that's it. We're left with nothing. Gefährlich. Imagine nowadays. Moshiach comes to Yerushalayim. Al Gag Beis Hamikdash. Anovim. Ru'oiri Shezereach. I've come to bring you out from the Golus of 2,000 years. Gewaldig. Yidden come from all over the world to Yerushalayim. Wow, this is what we've been waiting for. And then we say, look, Moshiach, we have a problem in Iran. If she can sort something out in Iran, he says, no problem, give me a flight to Iran. If he goes to Iran, when everyone's waiting to hear what's he gonna be, and then you see this Khomeini, see one of these leaders of Iran come out and say, that's a Moshiach. Now we're gonna show the Jews, we're gonna start bombing Israel. Shemra, this is anyone who doesn't have 100% emunah, he won't be able to live with it. He would say that it's not possible. This we waited 2,000 years. That's a Moshiach. Then he goes to Iran. He can't even do any peace with our enemies. And that's how the Jews felt. Says a medrash this on the Pasuk of Shir Hashirim. Al mishkovi baleilo ispikashti es shoavo nafshi. In the darkest nights of Mitzrayim, I was searching. Es shoav Moshe Rabbeinu. Where is he? He came and he went. For 6 months. 6 months Moshiach came, Moshiach went. And then Hashem said, come back, they trust me. Because a Jew doesn't put his trust in anything or anyone. And even the Moshiach, he doesn't put his trust. He has one. He trusts the Ribono Shel Olam. Hashem, I am Mammon in you. Moshiach can come, Moshiach can go. I have only trust in you. That Hashem said. This was the ultimate tikkun of the Bamo Eida that he said so many years ago, where we had maybe a chisoron of emunah, but now they have 100% emunah. They Mashiach, they don't trust. They trust only Hashem to bring them the geula, so that tefillas were held by Hashem. And this we can live in our life, Bezras Hashem. Sometimes we may do ishtadlus in business. We may invest in certain things. We may have ishtadlus in refuah, medical issues, and we invest in certain medication or Hashem Rachem operations, and sometimes it doesn't come out like we expected it to be. It doesn't come out. We have to go further. We have to say, Hashem, I trust only in you. You give prosperity. You give recovery. You give Yeshuas. And my trust in you. Then you will see the Yeshua. That's why I said in the Pasuk, Kavel Hashem, hope to Hashem. Chazak v'yamitzibecho, strengthen yourself. If Chaz v'sholom it doesn't work out, v'kavel Hashem, and continue to hope to Hashem, because then you will get the real salvation, real Yeshuas. May we be zoicha to see so many Yeshuas. Bez Hashem Yisporach. May you all have a wonderful Shabbat. Thank you very much for listening.